Millionaire gave $20 to the girl who fixed his Mustang. "You look just like my dad." He turned around and cried, "Before we dive in, whether you're having your morning coffee or winding down for the night, you're exactly where you need to." The September sun cast long shadows across Manhattan as Jack Donovan stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, 52 stories above Wall Street. At 45, he had conquered the financial world with ruthless precision. Forbes had just named him among the top 10 most influential investors in America. His net worth had crossed the billion-dollar mark 3 years ago, and he'd stopped counting since. Yet as he adjusted his custom-tailored Italian suit and checked his Patek Philippe watch, a small fortune strapped to his wrist, Jack felt the familiar hollowness expanding in his chest. "Mr. Donovan, they're waiting for you in the conference room." His assistant's voice barely registered. "5 minutes," he replied, not turning around. The skyline of New York, a city he'd helped reshape with his investments, stretched before him. 3 luxury homes, a collection of supercars, and a reputation that opened any door in the financial world. He had everything a man could want. Everything except someone to share it with. His divorce papers had been finalized last month after a mere 2 years of marriage. Patricia had been the perfect trophy wife on paper. Beautiful, socially connected, impeccably groomed. Their wedding had made the society pages. Their separation barely warranted a mention in the gossip columns. Neither seemed particularly affected by the dissolution. Jack's phone buzzed, with another reminder about the investment conference where he was the keynote speaker. 500 people waiting to hear his market predictions. His words would move millions of dollars before the trading bell tomorrow. With a sigh, he turned from the window and crossed his office to the small adjacent room that few knew existed. Inside sat his true passion, a partially restored 1968 Ford Mustang Fastback Acapulco Blue. His hands, so accustomed to signing contracts and checking financial reports, found their way to the smooth metal of the hood. This was the only thing. That made sense, he whispered to the empty room. The car had been a gift from Walter Bradford, the man who'd taken in a broken 15-year-old boy after his parents died in a house fire. Walter had been more than a guardian. He'd been a mentor, shaping Jack into the financial powerhouse he'd become. "Cars are honest, Jack," Walter had told him while presenting the Mustang on Jack's 21st birthday. "They only break down when you neglect them." Walter had passed away 5 years ago, leaving Jack his financial empire and this car, the only possession Jack truly cherished. A sharp knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Donovan, your speech starts in 10 minutes. Coming," he called, reluctantly leaving the garage. 20 minutes later, Jack stood at the podium delivering flawless insights about market trends and investment opportunities. The audience hung on his every word, desperate for the secrets to his success. If only they knew how empty success felt when you had no one to share it with. As applause erupted around him, Jack maintained his practiced smile. But inside, a question echoed that no amount of money could silence. What was the point of having everything when it still felt like nothing? Jack left Manhattan behind on Friday afternoon, the growl of the Mustang's engine drowning out the incessant pinging of his silenced phone. The investment conference had ended with a standing ovation, countless handshakes and business cards he'd tucked away without looking at them. None of it mattered this weekend. This was his ritual. Once every few months, he'd take the Mustang. Out of the city, away from the glass towers and endless meetings. Just him, the open road, and the car Walter had given him. Vermont, he said to himself, tapping the destination into his GPS. The fall foliage would be starting to turn. Perfect driving conditions through winding mountain roads. 3 hours into his journey, dark clouds gathered overhead. The weather forecast had promised clear skies, but nature had other plans. Fat raindrops began pelting the windshield as thunder rumbled in the distance. "Perfect," Jack muttered, slowing down as visibility deteriorated. The GPS recalculated, suggesting an alternate route to avoid flooding on the main highway. The detour took him onto increasingly rural roads. The sleek Mustang, built for smooth highways, rattled over potholes and uneven pavement. Jack gripped the steering wheel tighter as lightning flashed overhead. momentarily blinding him. When the engine coughed and sputtered, he initially blamed it on his imagination. But the second time it happened, followed by a concerning metallic knock, Jack knew something was wrong. The Mustang shuddered, lurching forward before rolling to a stop on the shoulder of the narrow country road. "No, no, no," he whispered, turning the key. The engine cranked but wouldn't catch. Rain hammered the roof as Jack popped the hood and stepped out, his expensive Italian leather shoes sinking into mud. A quick inspection confirmed his suspicion. Trouble with the carburetor. Something. He could fix easily in his Manhattan garage with the right tools, but impossible on a deserted road in a downpour. Jack reached for his phone, but the screen showed no signal. Of course. Through sheets of rain, he spotted a weathered sign half hidden by overgrown branches. Riverdale, 2 miles. Lightning illuminated the countryside for a split second, revealing rolling hills and farmland surrounding what appeared to be a small town in the valley below. It looked like something from a different era, a place untouched by the relentless march of progress that defined his world. With a resigned sigh, Jack closed the hood and climbed back into the driver's seat. He'd have to try getting the car started. Again, after 3 attempts, the engine reluctantly turned over, running rough but functional. "Just get me to town," he murmured, patting the dashboard like an old friend. The Mustang limped forward, protesting with every turn of the wheels. Jack hunched over the steering wheel, peering through the rain-streaked windshield as he navigated toward Riverdale, unaware that he was driving straight into the most important detour of his life. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time Jack coaxed the struggling Mustang into Riverdale. The town looked frozen in time, a main street lined with brick buildings, vintage lampposts, and not a chain store in sight. A far cry from the gleaming Manhattan skyline he'd left behind. A hand-painted sign caught his eye. Wilson and Daughter. Auto repair with open, flashing dimly in neon red. Jack guided his sputtering vehicle into the gravel lot, relieved when the engine finally died on its own terms. The garage was a weathered structure with faded blue paint and large bay doors. Tools hung in precise order on pegboards, and the concrete floor was swept clean despite years of oil stains. Jack noted the professional organization with surprise. Small-town businesses rarely maintained such standards. "Hello?" he called, stepping inside. "Anyone here?" The place appeared empty, but soft classic rock played from an old radio in the corner. Jack walked deeper into the garage, his designer shoes clicking against concrete. "I'll be right there," a young voice called from somewhere in the back. Jack expected the burly, oil-stained mechanic typical of these establishments. Instead, a small figure emerged from behind a lifted pickup truck. A girl no more than 12, with fiery red hair tied back in a practical ponytail, freckles scattered across her nose, and the most startlingly green eyes he'd ever seen. She wore overalls, covered in grease stains, with a wrench in one hand and a rag in the other. Those eyes assessed him quickly, then shifted to the Mustang outside. "Si chase her fastback," she said appreciatively. "Don't see many of those around here." Jack blinked, taken aback. "That's right. Is your father around? I'm having trouble with the carburetor." The girl smiled, revealing a gap where a canine tooth was growing in. "Dad's not in the picture. Mom taught me everything about cars since I was 5, and Grandma Sarah owns the place. She's grabbing supplies in town." She extended a small, grease-stained hand. "I'm Emily Wilson." Jack hesitated before shaking it. "Jack Donovan. Look, I don't mean to be rude, but I need someone with experience to look at my car." Emily's smile didn't falter. "I've rebuilt 3 carburetors this month alone, but you can wait for Grandma if you want. She'll be back in about 2 hours." With the storm picking up again and no other options, Jack reluctantly nodded. 2 hours? In this weather might as well be 2 days. "Let me take a look," Emily said, grabbing a toolbox that seemed too heavy for her small frame. She carried it effortlessly to the Mustang. Jack watched with growing astonishment as Emily diagnosed the problem with professional precision. Her small fingers moved confidently through the engine compartment, checking connections and components with practiced ease. "Your accelerator pump diaphragm is torn," she announced after 5 minutes, "and your float level needs adjustment. Classic problems with these holly carbs when they get jostled on rough roads." Jack couldn't hide his surprise. "How do you know all this?" Emily shrugged, already disassembling parts of the carburetor. "Mum said I could name car parts before I could name animals. Just grew up with it." Her expression momentarily clouded before she returned to work. 45 minutes later, the Mustang purred back to life, running smoother than it had in months. "That's impressive," Jack admitted, reaching for his wallet. "What do I owe you?" Emily wiped her hands on a rag. $20 for parts. Labor's free since I'm technically not supposed to work on cars without supervision. She grinned mischievously. Jack handed her a $20 bill, which she pocketed with a nod of thanks. "You, dunno," she said casually, studying his face. "You look just like my dad." Jack froze, his breath catching in his throat. "What did you say?" Emily reached into the front pocket of her overalls and pulled out a worn, creased photograph. "See?" She handed it to Jack with grease-stained fingers. "Mom always said I had my dad's eyes. That's him, that's my mom, and that's me as a baby." The moment Jack's fingers touched the photograph, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. There, smiling back at him, was a face he hadn't seen in 13 years, Catherine Williams. Her red hair caught in mid-breeze, her green eyes, Emily's eyes, crinkled with laughter. Beside her stood a younger version of himself, arm wrapped around her shoulders, looking at Catherine with an expression he barely recognized. Pure, uncomplicated happiness, and cradled in Catherine's arms was a tiny bundle with wisps of red hair. Jack's hand trembled. Where did you get this?" His voice sounded distant, as though someone else was speaking. "Mom kept it in her bedside table. After she died, Grandma gave it to me." Emily pointed to the back of the photo. "It says the date right there." Jack turned the photograph over. Written in Catherine's elegant handwriting was a date, 13 years ago, and the words, "Our little family, even if only for a moment." The garage seemed to spin around him. Jack lowered himself onto a nearby stool, still clutching the photograph. Catherine, their 2-year relationship in college had been the most genuine connection he'd ever formed. She was brilliant, an engineering student with a passion for classic cars that matched his own. They'd planned a future together until the London offer came, until Walter convinced him that relationships were distractions from success. Until he'd made the decision that apparently had consequences far beyond what he could have imagined. "You okay, mister?" Emily's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Jack looked up at the girl, at his daughter, seeing her now with new eyes. The shape of her jaw, the slight cleft in her chin, the analytical gaze. How had he not seen it immediately? "I knew Catherine," he managed to say, his throat tight. "We were close in college." Emily's eyes widened. "You knew my mom for real?" Excitement bubbled in her voice. What was she like back then? Did she already love cars? Did she talk about me? Each question felt like a physical blow. Jack turned, away, unable to maintain his composure under the innocent barrage of questions from a child who had no idea she was speaking to her father. "I'm sorry," he said, standing abruptly and walking to the garage entrance. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that reflected the emerging sun. "I just need a minute." Outside, Jack braced himself against the Mustang, drawing in deep breaths of damp air. 13 years. He had a 13-year-old daughter. Catherine had been pregnant when he left. She'd had his child and he'd never known. Or had he? A horrible thought struck him. Had Walter known? Had there been attempts to contact him that never made it through? When Jack finally turned back toward the garage, he saw Emily watching him. Curiously from the doorway, the photo still in her hand. The resemblance was undeniable now that he knew to look for it. "Did I say something wrong?" she asked. Jack swallowed hard. "No, you didn't do anything wrong. I just haven't seen your mother in a very long time. It was a surprise." Emily nodded, seeming to accept this explanation. "Grandma should be back soon if you want to talk to her about Mom." Jack nodded, his mind racing with implications and questions. One thing was certain, he wouldn't be continuing to Vermont today, or perhaps ever again. Jack paced the small waiting area of Wilson and daughter, glancing occasionally at the framed photos on the wall. Each one was like a punch to the gut. Catherine through the years, from a teenager holding a trophy at what appeared to be a junior mechanics competition, to a young woman in graduation cap and gown, to a proud mother with a toddler Emily on her hip. Catherine Williams. The name unlocked a flood of memories he'd buried beneath years of acquisitions and investments. They'd met in his third year at MIT when he was studying finance, and she was one of the few women in mechanical engineering. Their first conversation happened over a shared textbook in the library. He'd been researching vintage cars for a restoration project, and she'd corrected his understanding of carburetor designs without a hint of condescension. 3 days later, they were inseparable. For almost 2 years, they'd built what Jack had once believed was the foundation for their future. Catherine was brilliant, passionate, and grounded in a way that balanced his ambition. They'd talk for hours about restoring classic cars together someday, opening a specialty shop that combined her engineering expertise with his business acumen. Then came the London offer, a prestigious position with an investment firm that Walter insisted was once in a lifetime. Jack had hesitated, mentioning his plans with Catherine. "Let me show you something," Walter had said, pulling out a folder of statistics. 87% of executives at your level divorce within 5 years. Relationships are anchors when you're trying to rise. If it's meant to be, you can reconnect when you've established yourself. Jack had believed him. At 23, 5 years seemed like an eternity. He'd convinced himself he was being noble by cutting ties completely. A clean break to spare them both the pain of watching their relationship wither across an ocean. He'd ignored her calls, returned her letters unopened. Eventually, she stopped trying, and now, 13 years later, he discovered she'd been carrying his child when he left. "Mr. Donovan?" Jack turned to find Emily watching him examine the photos. "These are my favorites," she said, pointing to a picture of Catherine teaching a much younger Emily how to use a wrench. "Mom said I could take apart and rebuild a lawnmower engine by the time I was 7. When did she?" Jack couldn't finish the question. "The accident was 3 years ago," Emily said matter-of-factly, though her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. "Drunk driver hit her on the way home from a parts run. I've been living with Grandma since then." Jack nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. "This was Grandpa Wilson's shop originally," Emily continued, seemingly oblivious to Jack's turmoil. "He taught Mom everything, and she taught me. After Grandpa died, Mom took over. Now Grandma handles the business side, but she says I'll run it someday." The bell above the door jingled, interrupting their conversation. A tall, silver-haired woman entered carrying several paper bags. Her posture was rigid, her movements deliberate, as though each step required calculation. "Emily, I've told you not to—" The woman stopped abruptly when she saw Jack, her grocery bags dropping to the floor. Canned goods rolled across the concrete. "Sarah," Jack said quietly, recognizing Catherine's mother from holiday visits during college. Sarah Wilson's face drained of color. Her eyes, the same striking green as her daughters and granddaughters, widened in shock before narrowing with 13 years of accumulated anger. "Jack Donovan," she said, each syllable like ice. "You have a lot of nerve showing up here." Emily looked between them, confusion etched across her face. "Grandma? You know him too?" Sarah's hands trembled slightly. "Emily, go to the house and start dinner. I need to speak with Mr. Donovan alone." "But Grandma—" "Now, Emily." The girl hesitated, then nodded, casting one last curious glance at Jack before disappearing through a back door. As soon as she was gone, Sarah's composed facade cracked. 13 years, she whispered. 13 years. And you show up now? After everything? I didn't know, Jack said, his voice barely audible. "Sarah, I swear to you I had no idea Catherine was pregnant." Sarah leaned against the counter, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge. "She tried to tell you multiple times." "What do you mean?" "After you left for London, she discovered she was pregnant. She called your apartment, your office. She wrote letters." Sarah's voice cracked. "When Emily was 3 months old, Catherine even flew to New York and went to your office building. The receptionist said you were in a meeting." Jack felt sick. "I never received any messages. No one ever told me Catherine came looking for me. The great Jack Donovan, too important to be bothered." Sarah's bitterness was palpable. "Catherine eventually gave up, said it was clear you'd made your choice." Jack sank onto a wooden stool, his legs suddenly unable to support him. "Walter," he whispered. "It had to be Walter." "Your guardian? The one who practically raised you?" Jack nodded. He died 5 years ago. But before that, he was protective of my career, obsessively so. The pieces were falling into horrifying place. He must have intercepted everything, screened my calls, my mail. Sarah's expression remained skeptical. Jack pulled out his phone, scrolling through old emails before finding what he was looking for. "Here," he said, offering the phone to Sarah. "An email from Walter to our office manager, dated 13 years ago." Sarah took the phone reluctantly, reading aloud. "All communication from Catherine Williams is to be redirected to my attention. Mr. Donovan is not to be disturbed with personal matters during this critical phase of his career development." She looked up, some of the hardness leaving her eyes. "He really kept you in the dark." "I made the initial mistake of leaving," Jack admitted. "That's on me. But I never knew about Emily. Never." His voice broke. "I've missed 13 years of my daughter's life because of Walter's interference." Sarah handed back the phone. "What do you want now, Jack? You've built your empire. Emily and I have built our life here. We're managing." "Are you?" Jack asked gently. "I noticed the mortgage statement on your desk, the medical bills." Sarah stiffened. "That's none of your business." "It is if it affects Emily." Jack stood. "I want to know my daughter, Sarah. I can't get those years back, but I can be here now. And when your exciting life calls you back to New York, when you remember why you left Catherine in the first place, that was a different person," Jack said. "A kid who let someone else make his decisions. I'm not asking to disrupt your lives. Just let me be part of Emily's world, however you think is appropriate." Sarah studied him for a long moment. "Emily doesn't know you're her father. Finding out now like this, it would be too much." "I understand. For now, you can be a friend of the family. Someone who knew Catherine." Her eyes narrowed. "But one wrong move. One sign you're going to abandon her again and you're out of her life for good. Understood?" Jack nodded solemnly. "I'm cancelling everything. I'll stay at the inn in town as long as it takes." "The inn closed last year," Sarah said with a hint of grim satisfaction. "Nearest hotel is 30 miles away in Oak Ridge. Then I'll commute." Jack's resolve was unwavering. "I've missed 13 years, Sarah. I won't miss another day if I can help it." A small sound drew their attention to the doorway where Emily stood, eyes wide with curiosity. "Everything okay, Grandma?" she asked. Sarah composed herself. "Yes, dear. Mr. Donovan is an old friend of your mother's. He'll be visiting Riverdale for a while." Emily's face lit up. "Does that mean you can tell me stories about Mom when she was younger?" She never talked much about her college days. Jack's heart constricted at the hope in her eyes. "I'd like that very much, Emily, if it's okay with your grandmother." Sarah gave a tight nod. "Dinner's almost ready. Jack, would you like to join us as a friend of the family?" It was a small first step, but to Jack it felt monumental. "I'd be honored," he said. The following morning, Jack arrived at the garage early, bringing coffee for Sarah and hot chocolate for Emily. For the first time in years, he'd left his phone on silent, ignoring the cascade of missed calls and messages from his New York office. Emily was already at work, her small frame bent over the engine of an old Ford pickup. "Morning," Jack called, setting the drinks on a workbench. "Mind if I tinker with the Mustang while I'm here?" Emily brightened. "Can I help? Mom always said those old Mustangs had the prettiest engines." Jack nodded, oddly nervous around this child, who carried his DNA. "I could use an extra pair of hands." They worked side by side for hours, Jack marveling at Emily's intuitive understanding of the engine. She anticipated his needs, handing him tools before he asked and spotting potential issues he overlooked. "The timing's off by about 3 degrees, she said, squinting at the distributor. Jack checked the calibration. "You're right. How did you—" "No," she shrugged. "I can hear it, like when you play a wrong note on a piano." As they worked, Emily casually mentioned struggling in school, particularly with math. "That's surprising," Jack said. "You clearly understand mechanical engineering. Principles which require mathematical thinking." "School math is boring," Emily replied, deftly adjusting a bolt. "Who cares about X and Y when real things have real measurements?" Jack recognized something in her frustration, the same impatience he'd had with abstract concepts, until Walter showed him how they applied to the stock market. "Let me try something," he said, grabbing a notepad. "If this carburetor flows 750 cubic feet per minute and our engine displacement is 302 cubic inches with a maximum RPM of 6,000. What's our volumetric efficiency? Emily's brow furrowed as she worked through the problem verbally, calculating the air consumption with surprising accuracy. That's calculus-level math, Jack said, amazed. You just don't realize it. Really? My teacher says I don't apply myself. You have a different kind of intelligence, Jack explained. You understand systems and how they work together. That's much rarer than being good at textbook problems. Emily beamed under the praise, and Jack felt a strange pride he'd never experienced before. During lunch break, Emily led him to the back lot where several vehicles sat in various states of disrepair. She stopped at a tarp-covered car. This was Mom's baby, she said, pulling back the tarp to reveal a dusty 1970 Chevelle SS. The once vibrant red paint had faded to a dull rust color. She started restoring it before the accident. I promised her I'd finish it someday, but what? Grandma says we can't afford the parts. Emily's voice remained matter-of-fact, but Jack caught the disappointment in her eyes. And I'm not allowed to use the heavy equipment without supervision. Jack walked around the Chevelle, assessing its condition. It's a beautiful car. Your mother had excellent taste. She said it was her dream car since she was my age. Something ached in Jack's chest, the realization that he'd missed so many details of Catherine's life after he left, dreams she'd fulfilled without him. Emily, Sarah called from the garage entrance. Your math tutor is here. Emily groaned. I hate Tuesdays. As she trudged away, Jack remained by the Chevelle, feeling the weight of lost years. In just one day, he'd discovered more about his daughter than most fathers learn in months. Her mechanical aptitude, her mathematical mind disguised as intuition, her determination to honor her mother's memory. She's extraordinary, he murmured, to himself, running a hand over the dusty hood of Catherine's Chevelle. And I've missed so much. In that moment, standing amid the forgotten vehicles behind a small-town garage, the billionaire investment mogul made a silent promise to the daughter who didn't yet know he was her father. He would find a way to make up for lost time. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Each morning, Jack arrived at the garage with breakfast for everyone. Afternoons were spent working alongside Emily, teaching her about business while she taught him shortcuts she'd learned from her mother. In the evenings, he'd drive the 30 miles back to the hotel in Oak Ridge, making calls to his New York office during the journey. His executive team was in disarray over his extended absence, but for the first time in his career, Jack didn't care. He delegated decisions that once would have required his personal attention, pushed back meetings, and instructed his assistant to clear his calendar indefinitely. Here in Riverdale, helping a 12-year-old girl rebuild carburetors and watching her face light up when she solved complex mechanical problems, Jack felt more fulfilled than he had in years of closing billion-dollar deals. Sarah observed their growing bond with cautious approval. The initial frost in her demeanor had thawed as she witnessed Jack's genuine interest in Emily's life and his respect for the boundaries she'd established. On a crisp Sunday morning, Jack arrived to find Sarah alone in the office, her movements slower than usual. Emily's at a friend's house until noon, she said, rubbing her wrist absently. She's been talking about you non-stop, about the business lessons, the car work. Jack smiled. She's incredible, Sarah, so much potential. It's time, Sarah said quietly. Time to tell her the truth. Jack's heart stuttered. Are you sure? No, Sarah admitted. But she deserves to know, and you've proven yourself trustworthy these past weeks. She met his eyes directly. But this has to be on her terms, Jack, whatever she needs. When Emily returned, cheeks flushed from the autumn air, they sat her down in the small office behind the garage. Jack's hands trembled as Sarah began. Emily, remember how I said Mr. Donovan was a friend of your mother's? Sarah's voice was gentle. There's more to the story. Emily looked between them, confusion clouding her features. What do you mean? Jack leaned forward, choosing his words carefully. Emily, your mother and I were more than friends in college. We were in love. He paused, gathering courage. I'm your father. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Emily's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to something harder. That's not funny, she finally said, voice tight. It's true, sweetheart, Sarah confirmed. Jack is your biological father. Emily's eyes filled with tears. If you're my dad, where have you been for 12 years? Mom cried on my birthdays. Did you know that? She thought I was asleep, but I heard her. Each word was a knife in Jack's heart. I didn't know about you until I came here 3 weeks ago. I swear it. Liar, Emily shouted, jumping to her feet. Mom said she tried to tell you. She said you were too busy becoming important. Before either adult could respond, Emily bolted from the room. The screen door slammed behind her as she ran toward the workshop. Give her time, Sarah advised, though her own eyes were damp. This is a lot to process. Emily didn't return for dinner. Jack brought a sandwich to the garage, finding her curled up in the front seat of her mother's Chevelle, clutching an old photo album. Go away, she said, without looking up. I'll leave this here, Jack said, placing the plate on a nearby workbench. And Emily, I'm not going anywhere, not unless you tell me to. The next morning, Emily emerged from the house with red-rimmed eyes and a determined expression. She walked straight to Jack, who was checking inventory in the parts room. Why did you pick your job over us? She asked bluntly. Jack knew this. Moment required absolute honesty. Because I was young and stupid. I listened to bad advice instead of my heart. I thought success meant money and power. He met her gaze directly. It was the worst mistake of my life. Emily studied him for a long, tense moment. I need time, she finally said. And ground rules. Anything, Jack agreed immediately. You don't get to just be my dad. You have to earn it. Her voice wavered, but her resolve didn't. And you can't. Leave again. Not until I say it's okay. Jack nodded, hope blooming cautiously in his chest. I promise. Emily extended her hand formally. Then I guess you can keep coming around, as a trial basis. Jack stepped into his Manhattan office for the first time in a month, feeling like a stranger in his own domain. The gleaming surfaces and panoramic views that once represented achievement now seemed hollow. Mr. Donovan, his assistant Julie, hurried toward him. The board has been asking... Later, Jack interrupted. I need access to Walter's old correspondence files, and I want to speak with Margaret from HR. Hours later, surrounded by dusty boxes in the company archives, Jack pieced together a disturbing pattern. Among Walter's personal effects were copies of letters from Catherine, dating from 13 years ago to just before Walter's death, 5 years prior. Each marked intercepted with clinical precision. The most recent letter contained a school photo of Emily at age 7. On the back, Catherine had written, "She asks about her father, what should I tell her?" Margaret from HR confirmed Jack's suspicions. Walter had a standing order about Ms. Williams. All communication was to be redirected. To him, never to you. Who else knew about this policy? Jack asked. Margaret hesitated. Charles took over the protocol after Mr. Bradford's passing. Charles Bradford, Walter's nephew, and Jack's current vice president. The man who'd been handling daily operations. During Jack's absence in Riverdale, Jack found Charles in the executive lounge, casually reviewing quarterly projections. At 42, Charles had Walter's calculating eyes and sharp features, softened by expensive suits and practiced charm. Jack, finally back from your mysterious sabbatical? Jack tossed Catherine's letters onto the table. You knew I had a daughter. Charles didn't flinch. Uncle Walter believed in keeping your path clear of distractions. That wasn't his decision to make, or yours. Look at what you've built without those complications. Charles gestured to the skyline. A multi-billion-dollar empire. Would that have been possible while changing diapers? You had no right. Jack's voice was dangerously quiet. Charles straightened. Walter groomed you for greatness. I merely honored his vision after he passed. His smile turned cold. Besides, this company is as much Bradford as it is Donovan. Uncle Walter built it, molded you to run it. And now this child threatens that. Neat arrangement? Children complicate things, Charles replied smoothly, especially unexpected ones with inheritance claims. Meanwhile, in Riverdale, Jack had arranged for specialists to quietly review Sarah's medical records. The results were concerning. Her multiple sclerosis was progressing faster than she acknowledged, explaining her increasingly deliberate movements and frequent rest periods. The garage's financial records told an equally grim story. Medical bills had accumulated over 3 years, forcing Sarah to take loans against the property. They were 3 months behind on payments and the business was barely breaking even. Most troubling was a series of letters from Westland Properties, offering to buy the garage and surrounding land for significantly below market value. The most recent letter contained a thinly veiled threat about exploring alternate acquisition methods. Jack called his lawyer in New York. "I need everything you can find on Westland Properties, ownership structure, business practices, everything." That evening, Jack joined Emily and Sarah for dinner, his mind racing with revelations. Emily had begun calling him Jack instead of Mr. Donovan, a small but significant shift. "I've been thinking," Jack said carefully, "would you both consider letting me invest in the garage? Modernize some equipment, expand the classic car restoration service?" Sarah's expression tightened. "We don't need charity." "It's not charity," Jack replied. "It's investment in Emily's future and in Catherine's legacy." Before Sarah could respond, the phone rang. Emily answered, her expression darkening as she listened. "It's the hospital," she said, handing the phone to Sarah. "About your test results." Jack watched the color drain from Sarah's face and knew his time to make things right was running out faster than he'd feared. Jack cut his New York trip short, racing back to Riverdale after receiving Emily's panicked call. "Grandma collapsed at the garage," she'd said, her voice small and frightened. "They took her to County Hospital." The hospital was a weathered brick building on the outskirts of town. Jack found Emily in the waiting room, alone, her small frame curled into a vinyl chair that seemed to swallow her. When she saw him, relief flooded her face. "You came back," she whispered, as he sat beside her. "Of course I did." Jack placed an arm around her shoulders, surprised when she leaned into him. "What happened?" "She was fine in the morning," Emily said. "Then she dropped a wrench and couldn't pick it up. Her whole right side just stopped working." Her voice cracked. "The doctor said it's her MS, it's getting worse." A physician confirmed Jack's fears. Sarah had experienced a severe relapse, accelerating her condition's progression. She would need intensive treatment and physical therapy, expenses the Wilson family's basic insurance wouldn't fully cover. When they were finally allowed to see Sarah, Jack was shocked by how frail she appeared against the hospital sheets. "You should be in New York," Sarah said weakly, "running your empire." "I'm exactly where I need to be," Jack replied. After Emily stepped out to get water, Sarah gripped Jack's hand with surprising strength. "The garage," she whispered. "Bill's in my desk drawer. Password to the accounts is Catherine's birthday. Don't worry about that now. Promise me." Her voice grew urgent. "If anything happens to me—" "Nothing's going to happen," Jack interrupted. "Promise. Me, you'll take care of Emily, not from a distance. Not with money. She needs a father, Jack." Jack nodded solemnly. "I promise." The next morning, Jack arrived at the garage to find Emily already there, attempting to handle a customer's brake job. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed her sleepless night. "I've got appointments all week," she explained, struggling with a tool too large for her hands. "Can't afford to close." "Emily," Jack said gently, "you're 12. You can't run this place alone." "Watch me," she challenged, but her bravado crumbled when the wrench slipped, skinning her knuckles. She didn't cry, but her lip trembled as she wrapped a shop rag around her bleeding hand. "Partnership," Jack suggested. "You handle the mechanical expertise, I'll manage the business side. Deal?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. For Grandma. With Sarah's permission, Jack dove into the garage's financial records. The situation was worse than he'd imagined. Beyond the medical bills, equipment was failing. Suppliers were threatening to cut them off, and the mortgage was underwater. Most concerning were the escalating letters from Westland Properties. The latest, dated just 3 days earlier, mentioned reconsideration of our generous offer in light of recent health developments. "They've been after us for months," Emily explained, sorting parts in the storeroom. "Some guy in a fancy suit keeps showing up, talking about redevelopment opportunities." "When was the last time he came by?" "Yesterday." Emily's expression darkened. "Right after Grandma went to the hospital, said something weird too." "What exactly?" "That now that you were in the picture, certain obstacles would be removed soon." Emily looked up, her green eyes, Catherine's eyes, filled with worry. "He knew who you were, Jack, and he seemed happy that Grandma was sick." Jack felt cold fury building in his chest. "Did he leave a card?" Emily nodded, retrieving a business card from the register. "Richard Tenner, Westland Properties." Jack studied the card, noting the company logo, a stylized W that looked disturbingly similar to the Bradford corporate emblem. "Emily, I need to make some calls. Then we're going to visit your grandmother." At the hospital, Sarah confirmed Jack's suspicions. "The pressure started about 5 years ago, right after you reconnected with Walter. After Walter died," Jack corrected, "the pieces falling into horrible place." "The timing can't be coincidence," Sarah said weakly. "And yesterday, a man claiming to be from the insurance company visited me. Asked questions about my condition, my medications." She paused. "After he left, I started feeling worse, much worse." Jack's hand tightened around the bed rail. "I'm moving you to a private room with security, and I'm getting you the best specialists." Sarah started to protest, but Jack cut her off. "This isn't just about your health anymore, Sarah. I think someone is deliberately trying to harm you to get to the garage, to get to Emily." Jack installed Sarah in a private room at Albany Medical Center, 40 miles from Riverdale, but with superior care facilities. He hired round-the-clock private nurses with instructions to document all visitors and medications. The head of neurology, an old college classmate indebted to Jack for early investment in his medical tech startup, personally oversaw Sarah's treatment. Initial blood work shows traces of a substance that can exacerbate MS symptoms, Dr. Huang reported, after reviewing Sarah's tests. "It wouldn't appear in standard screenings, but it's unmistakable in these specialized panels." "Someone deliberately made her condition worse," Jack said, anger hardening his voice. "I can't say with certainty it was intentional, but yes, this compound would aggravate her symptoms substantially." Jack placed a call to his head of security in New York. "I need a team in Riverdale, discreet but thorough, background checks on anyone associated with Westland Properties, and I want surveillance on the garage and the Wilson house." Back in Riverdale, Emily insisted on staying at her home despite Jack's concerns. "This is where Mum's memories are," she said firmly. "I'm not leaving." Jack compromised by moving into Sarah's guest room and installing a state-of-the-art security system. During the day, they kept the garage running. Emily handled repairs with Jack assisting while he reorganized the business operations. Customers responded positively to the improvements, and word spread about the quality of work at Wilson and Daughter. At night, after Emily went to bed, Jack conducted his investigation. His team uncovered troubling connections. Westland Properties was a subsidiary of Bradford Ventures, a holding company created shortly after Walter's death. The sole shareholder was Charles Bradford. Most damning was an email chain recovered from Charles's company server, dated 3 months earlier. The Wilson property is essential for the Riverdale commercial development. Land survey confirms the garage sits on what will be the main access point. Without it, the entire project is non-viable. Charles's reply: "Increase pressure on the Wilson woman. Her condition should make her more amenable to selling." A later email was even more explicit. "Our sources confirm Donovan has made contact with the girl. This complicates matters. If he discovers her identity, he might become emotionally involved, jeopardizing our plans. Accelerate the acquisition timeline." Jack's hands shook with rage as he read the final message, sent just days before Sarah's hospitalization. "Our pharmaceutical contact has provided the compound. Administered correctly, it will create temporary but severe symptoms, making institutional care inevitable. Without the grandmother as obstacle, the child will be removed by social services. We'll acquire the property through default, and the Donovan problem solves itself." The next morning, Richard Tenner appeared at the garage as Emily was opening up. Jack watched from the office window as the man in an expensive suit approached her with the false warmth of a practiced predator. "Emily, I heard about your grandmother's condition. So tragic." Tenner's voice carried through the open bay doors. "I wanted to discuss our offer again. Given the circumstances, you'll need adult guardianship, and the state rarely allows minors to inherit businesses. Better to sell now while you have some control over the situation. Jack stepped out, his expression neutral despite the fury coursing through him. Mr. Tenner, is it? I'm Jack Donovan, Emily's father and Sarah Wilson's attorney in fact. He produced legal papers Sarah had signed at the hospital. All offers regarding this property should come through me. Tenner's practiced smile faltered. Mr. Donovan, Charles mentioned you might be visiting family in the area. Did he? How thoughtful of him to keep track of my movements. Jack's tone remained conversational. While we're sharing information, perhaps you could explain why a pharmaceutical compound known to exacerbate MS symptoms was found in Sarah Wilson's system after your visit to her hospital room. The color drained from Tenner's face. I don't know what you're implying. Let me be clearer. I have evidence linking you and Charles Bradford to a deliberate attempt to worsen Sarah's condition to force the sale of this property. Jack stepped closer. The police are very interested in this evidence, as is the FDA given the pharmaceutical angle. Tenner backed toward his car. This is absurd. You have nothing. I have the emails, Richard, all of them. Including your communications with the pharmaceutical contact who supplied the compound. This was a bluff, but Jack's confident delivery made Tenner visibly nervous. You should discuss this with Charles, Tenner stammered, retreating to his coiffure. After he sped away, Emily emerged from behind a truck where she'd been listening. Was that true? About someone making Grandma sicker on purpose? Jack nodded grimly. I'm afraid so. Why would anyone do that? Her voice was small, bewildered by such calculated cruelty. Money, power. Jack knelt to meet her eyes, but mostly fear. Fear of what? Of you, Jack said softly. Of us. As they closed the garage that evening, Jack received a call from his security team. Sir, we've detected someone accessing the Wilson home through the rear entrance. Jack and Emily raced to the house, accompanied by the security detail. They found the back door ajar and dresser drawers upturned in Sarah's bedroom. They were looking for documents, Jack realized, surveying the chaos. Property deeds, titles. Emily rushed to check her own room, returning with relief. Mom's box is still safe. I hid it under the loose floorboard like she showed me. She retrieved a metal lockbox, opening it to reveal the garage's original deed, insurance policies, and a sealed envelope addressed to Jack in Catherine's handwriting. Emily handed it to him wordlessly. Inside was a letter dated just weeks before. Catherine's accident never sent. Jack, if you're reading this, something has happened to me, and Sarah has finally reached you. I've tried for years to tell you about Emily, but I understand now that you made your choice long ago. Our daughter deserves to know her father, even if he chose a different path. She has your mind for strategy, your determination. What she needs now is your protection. Walter approached me 5 years ago, offering money to disappear with Emily. When I refused, he threatened to use his connections to declare me an unfit mother. He claimed the land our garage sits on is worth millions as part of some development deal. I don't know if these threats were real, but I've documented everything in case something happens to me. Trust no one associated with Walter Bradford. Despite everything, I hope you find the courage to be the father Emily deserves. Catherine. Jack folded the letter carefully, his hands trembling. She knew. She was trying to protect Emily from Walter, from Charles, from all of it. And now they're trying to take everything she built, Emily said, anger replacing her fear. We can't let them. Jack pulled out his phone. We won't. It's time to end this. He dialed his lawyer. Prepare the board documents immediately. Full audit of all Bradford Ventures subsidiaries focusing on Westland properties. And contact the FBI about potential corporate espionage and pharmaceutical tampering. To Emily, he said, pack what you need. We're staying at a hotel tonight, and tomorrow we're going to New York. Emily nodded, her jaw set with determination that mirrored Jack's own. We're going to fight back, aren't we? Yes, Jack promised. Charles has been playing chess, thinking I'd never see the board, but he forgot one thing. What's that? Jack looked at his daughter, so much like Catherine in her fierce intelligence, so much like himself in her strategic mind. I learned from the best, and now there are 2 of us. The Donovan Investments headquarters gleamed like a silver monolith against the Manhattan skyline. Jack guided Emily through the marble lobby, aware of the stares they attracted. Him in his usual impeccable suit, her in jeans and a faded Riverdale middle school sweatshirt, fiery red hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "People are looking." "At us," Emily whispered, unconsciously moving closer to Jack. "Let them look," Jack replied, placing a protective hand on her shoulder as they entered his private elevator. "You belong here as much as anyone." Emily's eyes widened as they emerged. Earned to Jack's executive suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, while elegant modern furniture and original artwork created an atmosphere of understated wealth. "This is where you work?" she asked, running her fingers along his mahogany desk. "This is where I used to spend most of my life," Jack corrected. "Now it's just a place I visit." Jack's assistant Julie appeared, her professional composure slipping momentarily when she saw Emily. The resemblance between father and daughter was unmistakable. "Mr. Donovan, the board is assembled in the main conference room. Mr. Bradford is." "Agitated." "Good," Jack said calmly. "Emily, Julie will show you to my office. There's a tablet you can use and the chef can make you whatever you'd like for lunch." Emily crossed her arms. "I want to come with you." Jack hesitated, then nodded. "Stay close to me. This might get unpleasant." The boardroom fell silent as Jack entered with Emily. 12 executives in expensive suits sat around a gleaming table, with Charles Bradford at the far end, his expression darkening at the sight of the girl. "Gentlemen, ladies," Jack began, "I apologize for the emergency meeting, but we have a situation requiring immediate attention." He gestured to Emily. "This is my daughter, Emily Wilson. Some of you may be surprised by this news. I certainly was when I discovered her existence 3 weeks ago." Murmurs rippled through the room. Charles leaned forward. "Jack, is this really appropriate for a board meeting? Your personal affairs are directly relevant to company business when a senior executive attempts to use corporate resources to harm my family." Jack interrupted, his voice steel-edged. Jack's lawyer distributed folders to each board member. "These documents outline a pattern of corporate malfeasance by Charles Bradford, including misappropriation of company funds, creation of unauthorized subsidiaries, and potentially criminal activities." Charles shot to his feet. "This is absurd. You disappear for weeks and return with some backwater mechanics brat, and suddenly I'm under investigation." Emily flinched at the insult, but her chin remained high. "Watch yourself, Charles," Jack warned quietly. "That brat is my daughter, and her mother was worth 10 of you." Jack activated the presentation screen, displaying emails and financial records. "Charles has been operating a shadow company called Bradford Ventures, using funds diverted from our real estate division. Through a subsidiary called Westland Properties, he's been pressuring small business owners in Riverdale, Vermont to sell their properties below market value for a commercial development." More images appeared, site plans, property assessments. When my daughter's grandmother refused to sell her garage, a property essential to Charles's development plan, he escalated to criminal tactics. Jack's voice remained measured, but his eyes burned with controlled fury. "We have evidence that Charles authorized the use of pharmaceutical compounds to worsen Sarah Wilson's multiple sclerosis, hoping to force her into institutional care so the property would be vulnerable." Shocked exclamations erupted around the table. Charles's face contorted with rage. "You can't prove any of this. This is a desperate attempt to maintain control of a company you've neglected for weeks." "Actually," Jack's lawyer interjected, "we have sworn statements from Richard Tenner of Westland Properties, electronic records of payments to a pharmaceutical consultant, and medical evidence from Ms. Wilson's blood tests. The FBI has opened an investigation." Charles's composure cracked. "Uncle Walter was right about you," he spat. "You were never worthy of the Bradford legacy. He built this company from nothing while you were just a charity case he took in. I am his blood, his rightful heir. Walter made me his successor because he knew you lacked the judgment to lead," Jack replied calmly. What he failed to realize was that his obsession with legacy and control would corrupt you both. "He protected you," Charles shouted. "When that woman came looking for you with her pregnancy story, Uncle Walter knew it would destroy everything he built. He handled it like he handled everything for you. Emily stepped forward, her voice surprisingly steady. My mom never lied. She just wanted my dad to know I existed. Charles sneered. And now Daddy knows, so you think you're entitled to the Bradford fortune. This company has been in my family for generations. I won't let some random small-town bastard. He never finished the sentence. Jack moved with startling speed, grabbing Charles by his expensive lapels and shoving him against the wall. That's enough, Jack said, his voice deadly quiet. You conspired against a 12-year-old girl and her sick grandmother. You authorized someone to administer dangerous compounds to a woman already suffering from a debilitating condition. You're finished, Charles, professionally, legally, in every way that matters. Security personnel entered the room, summoned by the board chairman. Mr. Bradford, please come with us. As Charles was escorted out, still shouting threats about family lawyers and retribution, the board chairman turned to Jack. We had no idea, Jack. None of us knew about Walter's actions regarding your daughter or Charles's continuation of those policies. I believe you, Jack said, but this company needs a thorough audit and restructuring, starting with the dissolution of Bradford Ventures and all subsidiaries. After the meeting concluded, Jack found Emily in his office, standing by the window, overlooking the city. Is it over? She asked, not turning around. The beginning of the end, Jack replied. Charles will face criminal charges. The company will survive, though it needs significant changes. Emily finally turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. He really hated me. Not me personally, but the idea of me. Charles saw you as a threat to his inheritance, his position. Walter raised him to believe the company was his birthright. Just like Walter kept you from knowing about me, Emily observed, because I was a threat to his plans for you. Jack nodded, struck by her insight. Yes, exactly like that. Are you? Emily hesitated. Are you disappointed that I exist? Jack crossed the room and knelt before his daughter, taking her hands in his. Emily Wilson, discovering you is the best thing that has ever happened to me. Better than any deal, any success I've ever had. I only regret the years we lost. For the first time since they'd met, Emily threw her arms around Jack's neck in a genuine hug. Me too, she whispered. As they left the imposing building that afternoon, Emily looked back at the towering structure. What happens to your company now? Jack smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years despite the challenges ahead. It becomes what it should have been all along, a tool, not a purpose, a means, to build something that actually matters. Like what? Like a future for you, for Sarah, for the garage. And maybe, Jack added, a place where a father and daughter can rebuild more than just classic cars. The Boston specialist's office was bright and modern, worlds away from the small county hospital in Riverdale. Sarah sat in a wheelchair reviewing her treatment plan with Dr. Mehra, a leading MS specialist. The new medication protocol is showing remarkable results, Dr. Mehra explained. Your last 3 tests indicate the progression has slowed significantly. Jack stood by the window, while Emily sat beside her grandmother, holding her hand. And the prognosis? Sarah asked directly. With continued treatment, proper physical therapy and stress management, there's no reason you can't maintain your current level of function for many years, Dr. Mehra smiled. Though I still recommend reduced physical labor. Outside, as they waited for the car, Sarah looked up at Jack. I can't accept charity forever, Jack. These treatments, this specialist, it's not charity, Jack interrupted gently. It's family. The word hung in the air between them, weighted with new meaning. 2 weeks later, Jack called a family meeting at the kitchen table of the Wilson home. He spread out blueprints and business plans across the wooden surface. Wilson and daughter. Classic Restoration, he announced. A high-end restoration center specializing in vintage American muscle cars. Emily's eyes widened as she examined the drawings. This is our garage? With some modifications, Jack explained. Modern equipment, expanded workspace, a showroom for completed projects. He turned to Sarah. And accessible facilities throughout, with an office designed for your needs. Who would run this? Sarah asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. All of us. Emily's mechanical expertise, your business connections in the community, my investment and marketing experience. Jack looked at his daughter. A true family business. Emily traced the blueprint with her finger. Say it, and we'd restore cars like Mom's Chevelle? Exactly like that. We'd also offer apprenticeships for local students interested in mechanical restoration, create opportunities like Catherine would have wanted. Sarah studied Jack's face. You're serious about staying in Riverdale? I am. Jack slid another document across the table, a real estate contract. I've purchased the Peterson place on Maple Street. It needs work, but it's only a 5-minute walk from the garage. But your company in New York, Sarah began, will continue with a restructured management team. I'll commute when necessary. But my life is here now. Jack turned to Emily. If that's okay with you. Emily considered this, her expression serious beyond her years. I still have school here and friends. Of course, Jack nodded. I was thinking, maybe you could spend alternating weekends in New York with me. Get to know that part of my life. Too, if you want. A small smile formed on Emily's face. I've never been to New York, and I've filed the legal paperwork to formally establish paternity, Jack continued, addressing Sarah. With your approval, of course. Sarah's eyes misted. Catherine would be. She paused, collecting herself. She would be pleased to see this. All she ever wanted was for Emily to know her father. As spring arrived in Riverdale, the transformation began. The old Wilson and daughter garage expanded, with local contractors working alongside specialists brought in from New York. Jack divided his time between finalizing Charles's removal from his company and overseeing the restoration center's development. Emily flourished under the arrangement, spending weekdays in Riverdale and alternating weekends in Manhattan. She approached both worlds with characteristic curiosity, attending Broadway shows and museum exhibitions in the city, then returning to Riverdale to apply new techniques to the cars in the garage. On a warm April evening, as Jack and Emily sat on the porch of his newly renovated house, she asked the question that had been lingering between them. Are you really okay with this, living in a small town after having everything in New York? Jack considered his answer carefully. I thought I had everything in New York. I was wrong. He looked at the sunset painting the sky above the distant mountains. Some things can't be measured in dollars or square footage. Emily nodded, understanding beyond her years. Mum used to say that the most valuable things can't be bought. She was right, Jack said softly. As usual. Summer arrived in Riverdale, bringing with it long golden evenings perfect for garage work. The Wilson and Daughter Classic Restoration Center was thriving, with 3 restoration projects already completed for wealthy collectors who had heard about their craftsmanship through Jack's connections. But after hours, when the employees had gone home, Jack and Emily devoted themselves to a special project, Catherine's 1970 Chevelle SS. Mom always said this car was her dream, Emily explained as they removed the tarp fully for the first time. Grandpa taught her to drive in one just like it. The Chevelle was in worse condition than Jack had initially assessed. Rust had claimed portions of the frame, the engine was seized from sitting idle, and the interior had suffered water damage from a leak in the garage roof before Jack had it repaired. This is going to take months, Jack said, running his hand along the faded hood. Emily nodded, undaunted. That's okay. It should take time. Mom would want us to do it right. They established a routine, 2 hours every evening and Saturday mornings devoted solely to the Chevelle. Jack ordered authentic parts from collectors across the country, while Emily meticulously documented every step of the restoration in a leather-bound journal. During their work sessions, the garage became a classroom of mutual exchange. Jack taught Emily about investment principles and business strategies using car parts as metaphors. Emily showed Jack mechanical shortcuts Catherine had developed, techniques passed from mother to daughter. See how these bolts are arranged? Emily demonstrated one evening. Mom called it the star pattern. You tighten them in this sequence and it prevents warping when everything heats up. Jack watched his daughter's confident hands, so small yet so capable. Your mother was brilliant. She said the same about you, Emily replied casually, said you could see patterns in chaos that nobody else noticed. These casual revelations about Catherine, how she had spoken of him to their daughter despite his absence, both warmed and pained Jack's heart. By December, the Chevelle's exterior gleamed with fresh cranberry red paint and the rebuilt engine roared with perfect combustion. Only the interior remained unfinished. As they removed the damaged backseat to prepare for reupholstering, Emily noticed something unusual. "There's a panel here that doesn't match," she said, tapping the floorboard. "The metal sounds different." Jack examined the area. "It's a hidden compartment. Some muscle cars had them installed by owners for various purposes." Together they carefully pried open the concealed panel, revealing a metal box tucked inside. Emily pulled it out, dust cascading from its surface. "It has Mom's initials," she whispered, tracing the engraved KW with her finger. Inside lay a collection of documents, the original purchase papers for the Chevelle, service records, and beneath them, a leather-bound journal and a bundle of envelopes tied with faded ribbon. Each envelope was addressed simply, "Jack." "These are letters," Emily said softly. "From Mom to you." Jack gently took the bundle, his hands trembling slightly. Letters she never sent. "Read them," Emily urged. "I'll give you some space." "No," Jack said firmly. "We should read them together." They moved to the small office where Jack opened the first letter dated shortly after Emily's birth. Catherine's elegant handwriting filled the pages not with recriminations or anger, but with simple updates about their daughter's development. "First smile today. She has your dimple on the left side. 6 months old, and already fascinated by engine sounds, definitely your daughter. Walking at 10 months, stubborn and determined just like both her parents." Each letter documented moments Jack had missed, first words, first steps, first day of school. Not to punish him for his absence, but to preserve these memories as if she had always believed that someday, somehow, he would want to know. The final letter, dated just weeks before Catherine's accident, contained a photograph of Emily at 9, proudly holding a trophy from a junior mechanics competition. "She is the best of both of us, Jack. Whatever happened between us, this remarkable girl deserves to know all of her heritage, your brilliance, your determination, your capacity for greatness. Someday, I hope you'll get to see that for yourself, when—" They finished reading. Both father and daughter sat in silence, tears streaming unashamedly down their faces. "She never stopped believing in you," Emily finally whispered, "even when she should have." Jack carefully folded the letter, his heart full of a bittersweet ache. "Then I better make sure I deserve that faith." 1 year after beginning the restoration, Jack and Emily stood side by side in the gleaming showroom of Wilson & Daughter Classic Restoration, admiring the completed 1970 Chevelle SS. The cranberry red paint caught the morning light streaming through the windows, highlighting every perfect curve and polished chrome detail. "Mom would love it," Emily whispered, running her hand along the fender. "She would," Jack agreed, his throat tight with emotion. Today was special for multiple reasons: the Chevelle's completion, the 1-year anniversary of their business renovation, and, most importantly, Emily's 13th birthday. Sarah entered from the office, moving slowly but steadily with a sleek carbon fiber cane. The advanced treatments had worked wonders. While her MS remained, the progression had slowed dramatically. "The guests will be here soon," she reminded them. "Emily, don't you want to change?" Emily glanced down at her oil-stained coveralls and grinned. "These are my fancy work clothes, Grandma." The restored garage had become a destination for classic car enthusiasts throughout the Northeast. Their waiting list for restoration projects extended 6 months, and they'd hired 4 local mechanics, including 2 women who had specifically applied to work with the female mechanic prodigy everyone's talking about. As afternoon approached, the celebration began. Emily's school friends mingled with car collectors and locals, all gathered to celebrate her birthday and see the unveiled Chevelle. Jack had invited a few trusted colleagues from New York, creating a unique blend of Emily's 2 worlds. After cake and presents, Jack called for everyone's attention. "I have one more gift," he said, handing Emily a small box. Inside lay a set of keys with a Chevelle keychain. Emily looked up, confused. "The Chevelle? But that's Mom's car." "And she would want you to have it," Sarah said softly, "when you're old enough to drive it." "But that's not all," Jack continued, presenting an envelope. "This is the real gift." Emily opened it carefully, reading the documents inside with growing amazement. The Catherine Williams Foundation for Women in Mechanical Engineering? Jack nodded. A scholarship program for young women pursuing careers in automotive restoration and mechanical engineering. The first recipient will be chosen next year. And this, Emily asked, holding up another document. A trust fund, Jack explained. Not accessible until you're 25, ensuring you can pursue whatever dreams you have. College, expanding the business, or something we haven't even imagined yet. Emily studied the papers, her expression serious beyond her years. Then, to everyone's surprise, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. I have something for you too, she said, handing it to Jack. Inside was a key, not to the Chevelle, but a simple key with a tag labeled Dad. For your toolbox, Emily explained. I figured. Well, it's been a year. Trial period's over. Her voice wavered slightly. If you still want the job. Jack pulled his daughter into a tight embrace, not caring about the crowd watching or the tears threatening to spill. It's the only job I'll ever need. Later, as the party wound down, father and daughter took the Chevelle for its first real drive. The powerful engine rumbled as they cruised down the same country road where Jack had broken down a year earlier. Where to? Jack asked. Emily smiled, her mother's eyes bright with excitement. Anywhere. We've got time. As they drove into the setting sun, Jack reflected on the strange path that had led him here. He had spent decades building skyscrapers and portfolios, accumulating wealth beyond imagination, yet found his true purpose in a small-town garage, with a red-haired girl who had his determination and her mother's heart. The legacy that mattered wasn't made of steel and glass, but of moments like this. Father and daughter, a shared passion, and the road ahead, stretching endless with possibility.